Pretty lights. So it's been a little while since we did a PC build on this channel, and with the recent launch of Intel's Kaby Lake CPUs and 200 series motherboards, we thought, why not start the new year off right with a good old Kaby Lake build? I mean, I guess I can't say good old because it's new. Good new Kaby Lake build. Doesn't have the same ring to it. So you might have seen my video recently comparing the Z170 chipset that launched with Skylake to the Z270 chipset that launched with Kaby Lake. You can click the little eye in the corner anytime to watch that. In that video, I talked about a few of the new Z270 motherboards from ASUS. Well, lucky us, they also sent us a bunch of other awesome goodies, and it's all compatible with ASUS Aura Sync RGB lighting system. In case you've been living under a rock during 2016, RGB LEDs have been all the rage, and what we're seeing now is product manufacturers coming up with software that lets you sync up multiple products with RGB LEDs so they all flash and breathe and strobe together. Synergy. Epilepsy. Just some words to describe it. So I did the logical thing and decided I'd rig up these components with some extra ASUS Aura compatible LED strips from CableMod and make a cool Z270 build in the Thermaltake Core P5. And full disclosure, I just picked this case because it has such an open design and I thought it would be easy to build in. And we also haven't done anything with this case yet on the channel, so I was curious. The P5 is normally used for sick water-cooled builds with hardline tubing and stuff, so this build is a bit of a letdown in that regard, but it still does serve to give excellent visibility to the LED lighting, and it is enormous. Thermaltake released a smaller version called the Core P3, but we don't have that one. We have this one. So now what do we got in this thing? The whole arrangement is centered around the ASUS Maximus IX Hero motherboard. As I said in my Z270 video, it's part of the flagship ROG line of motherboards with enthusiast class features like dedicated headers for water pumps, AIO coolers, and water flow monitoring, none of which I used in this build. The other really important feature here is the two dedicated RGB headers at the top and the bottom, so you can plug compatible RGB LED strips directly into the motherboard. No power supply or USB connections required, but more on that later. As you can see, I'm using a Corsair H110i GT liquid CPU cooler, and it's barely fitting the distance from the radiator mounts to where the 7700K is, but we made it work. And populating our memory slots is 32 gigabytes of G.Skill Trident Z DDR4. There's no LEDs, but they have a pretty sick gunmetal finish that goes with the rest of this build's kind of dark gray aesthetic very nicely. Plus, those jagged fins on the top look badass. They're dangerous. Oh, and I threw in a HyperX Fury 240 gig SSD for the boot drive, and a 750 watt Bitphoenix Fury semi-modular power supply since it already had them nice braided cables. Next up, the ROG Strix GTX 1080, one of the best air-cooled cards on the market right now, aside from any LED functionality. It's got 3 fans for excellent cooling that shut off when the card is idle, and one really interesting feature is the inclusion of a pair of 4-pin fan headers under the front edge of the card near the power connectors. This can connect to system fans so that they can respond to the temperature of the graphics card. Awesome for responsive cooling, but since they use the same controller as the card's fans, those system fans will also shut off if they're idle, so I'd only use it if the rest of the case's cooling is taken care of already. Obviously, we've got these 6 RGB LED accents on the front, but we've also got an illuminated ROG logo on the rear, which is covered by a backplate. As you can see, I installed the GPU vertically for no other reason than to show off the LEDs. You're welcome. Now moving on to the peripherals, we've got the ROG Claymore Core 10 keyless mechanical keyboard with Cherry MX Brown switches, and the ROG Spatha gaming mouse, which can work either wired or wirelessly. They've both got cool matching detailing that ASUS says is Mayan inspired, but I don't have any Mayan friends, so I can't speak to that. Hoping to meet one someday though. Now, both of these peripherals are awesome in their own right, and we should probably do a video on them eventually. They both have metal alloy construction that makes them feel and perform like premium products, and the Spatha even comes with 2 extra Omron switches to swap out if that's your thing. They're obviously both compatible with the Aura Sync software, as you can see, but they also both use the separate ROG Armory software, which allows for button mapping, surface calibration, and all that. Now that makes the whole thing a little confusing for both you and the PC because you have two different programs trying to control lighting. I had to close and open Aura and Armory and restart the computer a few times to get everything working correctly, as you see now. Also, as far as I could tell, Aura Sync only works with the Spatha in wired mode, so that's kind of lame, but I understand technology has limitations. If only it didn't. Now, time to go back to those RGB headers I mentioned earlier. ASUS have had these out for a while now, actually, but they allow you to add full RGB lighting control without an exterior module like the NZXT Hue Plus. But it's important you know that the headers will only work with LED strips that have the same configuration for the R, G, and B pins on the LED strip. Interestingly, the CableMod wide beam strips I used have a different configuration, but Good Guy CableMod has included an adapter for ASUS Aura RGB headers. So nice. So with the extension cable included with the motherboard, you're pretty much set to slap your strips on wherever. I had two strips, so I had to grab another extension cable from another motherboard, but if I was smarter, I would have found a way to lay the strips in so I could daisy chain them, but I'm not smarter, and that's just the reality we live in. I should also note that these are the magnetic LED strips, so there's no adhesive. I just ruined that. So why did you even make this video, Riley? Come on. Well, basically, this build serves to highlight the fact that RGB LEDs have taken over our lives, our souls, and our existence as a species. If you want to have synchronized LED lighting between your motherboard, GPU, LED strips, and peripherals, you can with ASUS Aura Sync and similar solutions from other companies. But you've got to buy specific compatible products. Now, there's a few components in this build that escaped the overpowering torrent of RGB, the RAM, cooler, and power supply, but RGB versions of each of those components do exist. So maybe one day there will be an open source solution that allows you to RGB all the things together. Or maybe the industry will shift towards unobtrusive minimalist designs. Who would want that, though? Alright, that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Click over here for previous videos. Check us out on Twitter over here. But as always, like the video if you liked it. Comment below for fans with benefits. Subscribe for more videos like this from NCIX. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I got. I don't know.